Good morning. What's up, Donnie? How you doing, bro? Yo, by the way, how's everything down there in Texas, man? I heard it's a lot of snowing going on in Texas. It seems like now the weather pattern is for Texas is y'all gonna have snow every year, basically. Um, correct me if I'm wrong, but that's a relatively new thing, right? With climate change and everything. I didn't know Texas was getting snow like that on the regular. I mean, I know the northern Midwest states definitely do, but I didn't know the southernmost Midwestern state does, and that would be Texas. But in any case, bro, good to see you, man. Good to have you back as usual, man. I'm glad to have good people like yourself, real soldiers, people that enjoy information, good conversation, um, over a steady, consistent period of time. You know what I'm saying? Because it could always veer off into something that may not be as useful to as many people as possible. I don't know. I'm still a dreamer. I like to think that information is, something that all people would desire. Useful information, but sometimes people want to be distracted, and it's all good. It's all good, to each his own. People can do that. Correct. But we good. Okay, that's good, man. That's good. Yeah, it's hard to keep up with global events right now, but because things are moving so fast, man, there's not enough time to cover everything. And even if you want to just cover what's going on in the Western world, which is largely televised, um, you won't have enough time because it's just moving too damn fast over here in the EU. Daily there's new information coming out. But by the way, to give Americans some idea about what the conversation is in the EU, because trust me, you're not getting it on American television. CNN, ABC, even when they're talking about Greenland or Denmark, you're getting the tiniest bit of the conversation. And also, as far as military movements on the ground in the EU, there's a lot of military movement on the ground right now, and not to say that it's extreme, but it's enough to where you notice, some pieces are being moved around, basically, and Denmark is a big part of that because Denmark is on the Baltic Sea, and has been an ally, one of the strongest allies of the U.S. in the Baltic Sea since NATO, since the invention of NATO itself. So, the Western media like CNN, ABC, the American Western media, they don't cover the EU um, in a way that I think gives Americans an idea of what's happening outside of their own sphere. So I'm going to look at a little bit of that today. But check this out, man. Again, we back to Trump. Trump takes up a lot of attention. He takes up a lot of news. Trump goes to the toilet today. The news is going to cover it. Trump got to take a dump today. The news is going to cover it. Trump cheats on his wife. News is going to cover it. Um, you know, it's ridiculous. But this is something about the federal layoffs here. Let me see something. Apparently, Donald Trump has recently taken actions affecting federal employees' work status. On January 21st, 2025, he issued an executive order mandating that all federal workers return to office 5 days a week, effectively ending remote work arrangements. What you think about that? I mean, remote work arrangements. I don't. To me, I don't. I think the U.S. federal government is so big, you can't even house all of its employees. And housing your employees costs you more money. Essentially, it costs more. And it seems to me like the comments, the reasoning behind cutting the staff is not to save money, it's just to disrupt things that they, one reason or another, at the blink of an eye, don't seem to like. And then they change policy without really looking at what's going on in the first place. And this will give you an idea because since he's done that, these actions are part of a broader initiative to reduce federal workforce and restructure government operations. Right. Now it says additionally on 2020 on 2225, the administration placed employees involved in diversity, equity, and inclusion (DEI) programs on paid leave, with plans to eventually terminate these positions. Now it's so funny how the rollout is 2 different days for this. You know, um, I don't understand it. It confuses people because in my mind, if you want to roll out, which is an explanation, a design for what you're about to do behind your executive order, right? Um, it would be in a more comprehensive manner. Like if you're dealing with federal employees, let's address federal employees in a comprehensive manner. All federal employees in a comprehensive manner, not some over here to the left and some that are on DEI this way. Yo, it's kind of hard for people to follow, and it makes the Trump administration look chaotic, you know. But check this out. Subsequently, agencies have been directed to begin processing the firing. So he put to begin processing the firing. Again, this is more threatening language, and threatening language regarding Trump doesn't always turn out to be factual and truthful and honest, uh, direct language to American voters. A lot of times it turns out to be something he can slip and slide his way out of and be like, well, I didn't really mean that. I just meant this. And hey, we got to get started somewhere. So I didn't say I would fire them all. I may have said that, but then I also said I would look at some things. It's the same washing Trump is going to go on for 3 years. But here, Trump's rapid changes in US government stun federal workers. Now let's see here. This is Reuters. Man. Actually, when you get a chance, block these things because the algorithms are off the chain these days. Basically, folks are going to end up having to block everything, every cookie, every single thing, just to be able to get a decent variety of news. Because now the way the algorithms are working on the net, it's just like steering people towards things, like that they may not realize. But let me see here. People walk inside the upper floors of the rotunda in the U.S. Capitol building at sunset in Washington, USA, January 4th, 2023. Okay, so let's see here. Trump moves quickly to remake federal bureaucracy. Exactly. That's a good way to put it. To remake federal bureaucracy instead of, you know, making something a little more positive, just more bureaucracy. He complains about bureaucracy, but then creates more. Unions fear hundreds of thousands of firing. I don't understand what it is Trump doesn't get. Well, it's obvious he's not a civil servant because he doesn't get how government, i.e., law, i.e., unions, i.e., how shit works. He doesn't realize that what he is trying to do creates more struggle than what it resolves. And usually a person that's out to do good would think about that. But then again, Trump claims to know nothing about civil service or how anything works. So people saying wash his craziness. Lawsuit seeks to block sweeping changes. Well, it's a lawsuit. And now think about this. Anytime, oh, by the way, let me drop the link. Let me drop the link here. Anybody can hop up. Did I do that already? Yeah, here you go. Anybody can hop up that wants to while I'm live. But it seems like Trump, on one hand, he makes these acts pretty rapidly, but then switches back. Let me see here. It says and people saying wash it. So he's never held accountable because they always give him the benefit of the doubt. Now let me read this. President Donald Trump has ordered that all U.S. government staff working on diversity, equity, and inclusion (DEI) schemes be put on immediate paid administration leave. Okay, so first of all, paid administration leave is not firing. First of all, and anybody who knows anything about it will think, okay, you're on paid leave, but what about the firing part, right? Think about this. He's telling people at the same time, the day after or the day before, that are on home, that work from home or remotely, that you'll be fired if you don't return, if you don't work inside of the government. Oh, come back to and stop working remotely. 2 seconds, y'all. Hold on to my phone. About that, y'all. Okay, it was just a phone call. But so in any case, we back here on Trump, and you know, he's calling employees that were working remotely, doing a job. Think about this. Do you even know what the job is that these people are doing? Does Trump know? Is the media explaining the job that these people are doing? Where is the story? But let me go on to read to give you an idea, a more detailed idea of what I mean. Um, let's see here. All right. President Donald Trump has ordered that all U.S. employees or government staff working on diversity, equity, and inclusion schemes be put on immediate paid administrative leave. Okay, let me read this again. Has ordered that all U.S. government staff working on diversity, equity, and inclusion schemes. What is that? What's a diversity, equity, and inclusion scheme? And what does it entail working on it? What does working on it mean? Does it mean you're employed by the federal government, and therefore, since the federal government practice DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion, that all employees should be fired? I mean, or they're no good? What is it they're going to get? Um, and to me, it seems like the media is not really like jumping on 70% of the story. But let's see here. On Tuesday, the White House confirmed that all federal DEI workers had to be put on leave by 5 o'clock EST, Eastern Standard Time, right? The following day before the offices and programs in question were shut down. You see this? On Tuesday, the White House confirmed that all federal DEI workers, you see, he had to be put on. So there's a change in language. This is the problem here. So you're not going to know. And the media needs to press Trump and his administration on the language they use. Because I would like to pick up a newspaper and know what the hell he's talking about exactly before I have an opinion, before I have a strong opinion for or against. And it seems to me right now, a lot of people take the bait of being for or against something extremely more than their desire to seek knowledge over what is going on, what normally happens, what are the normal practices and procedures, how long have those normal practices and procedures been in place, la 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 la, these kind of things before you figure out. And for me, I'm still trying to figure out, well, what's he talking about? Because the moment I heard that he was putting them on leave, DEI workers on leave, I immediately understood that is not the same thing as being fired. And on top of that, check this out. On top of that, there is hold on 2 seconds. Immediately, I looked at the change in the language, because when there's change in language, when there's specific language being used and it now specifically changes, that means there's something different going on. because there's a clear distinction between paid leave and firing. Paid leave is not only to fire people. Paid leave is also to investigate, to find out, to understand more, to it's a lot of stuff, you know. Paid leave even goes to people you can't fire or that you're afraid to fire because you think the backlash will be greater, as in the financial penalties to your offices. Now, keep in mind, Trump can do anything that he wants as a presidential act, as long as it's deemed as a presidential act. He can screw up the economy. He can screw up your life. And I don't just mean liberal, neoliberal, blah, blah, blah. That term a lot of people like to throw around lightly, like it's a magic wand. Um, but he can hurt even more than that. He can hurt because there's more MAGA people than there are neoliberal. There's liberals, then there's neoliberal. You see what I mean? There's conservatives that are Democrats, then there's liberals, then there's neoliberals. You see, and obviously, MAGA has a bigger mass of them, their ideologues, than you have conservatives or anything else. You see what I'm saying? So in an executive order also issued on Tuesday, Trump also called for an end to the dangerous, demeaning, immoral programs. Again, he has defined now himself these programs with these terms: dangerous, demeaning, immoral. That means that he has to find something in it in order to make a case legally, right? Because these things are going to court. And the things that he says to the public as the president are being documented as his actual reasoning because he's the president. So what you say is not, it can't be taken off of the presidential record anymore once you become the president and you make it public, right? So it's unclear how many people are affected by the order. The American Federation of Government Employees, AFGE, which represents 80,000 federal workers, said, can you imagine 80,000 people suing you? I mean, not 80,000, 800,000 suing you, the government. So think about that. That's almost 1 million federal workers suing the United States government. Now, you do understand, if the Supreme Court, whatever the Supreme Court's findings are on this, they are being dealt a heavy, heavy, heavy hand, a difficult hand to play. Because on one hand, if they don't affect and protect federal employees, they're federal employees themselves. So, I mean, they're being put against others like them. Now, here's the thing. Also, let's say they do support Trump's theory to fire them because they're dangerous. They're, as Trump says, these programs are dangerous, demeaning, and immoral. So they will have to give instances where that claim is being made. I mean, they would have to give instances where that actually exists, right? And the Supreme Court would have to see those instances as enough proof, right, of the program's operations, right? But to me, it seems like this puts a lot of people in a bind, because how fast does a Supreme Court justice have to rule on any court hearing? That could take years. Think about this, y'all. Remember when Biden and Kamala Harris, Biden signed the American Rescue Plan? That was in 2021. That was within the first months of him being president. But they blocked it. The Republicans blocked it in courts, and that has been blocked in courts for 3 years. It's almost some of it just getting cleared up now, luckily, but it's not all clear. So you get now what's going on. These employees could be on paid leave for 4 years. So when you're the president and you issue an executive order processing the executive order is something that you and your cabinet would do, would want to do. It would behoove you because you would want to know how it's going to play out after a day or two, or a month, or 6 months, or seven, or a year, or 5 years. Right? That would be what you would want to do when you're really on your job. You wouldn't want to just gamble, right? But here, this is literally just a gamble. You know, people might argue that Trump has the Supreme Court in his back pocket. Yeah, but not with all things. Not with all things, because just because the Supreme Court could rule partially in his favor doesn't mean they will rule completely in his favor. And if they don't rule completely in his favor, that's 800,000 employees that have to be compensated by the federal government. The federal government, the executive branch, would have been the perpetrator at that point. So let me see here. DEI programs aim to promote participation. Hold on, let me see. Since his inauguration, the president has acted swiftly on a number of key pledges through a raft of unilateral actions, including crackdown on DEI. In his inaugural address, he pledged to forge a society that is colorblind, but that's the words that racists use, colorblind. I mean, there's no such thing as colorblind. I like to see color differences. I like to acknowledge, wow, this person looks different, looks nice, but looks different. Looks nice because they look different also. That's an interesting look. Wow, haven't seen that hairstyle in a while. Wow, haven't seen that kind of whatever you want to call it, dinner. I don't want to eat hamburger every day. I would like a little bit of pasta bolognese. I would like a little bit of, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Peanut soup, peanut stew. I would like, some diversity in my dinner plans. You know, I don't want just a piece of pork and bread on my plate every day. No, I want my plate diversified. I want my shopping stores, the foods that I eat, diversified. And I want the helpful employees to be diverse also, because in that diversity brings strengths. They bring all their strengths together. They don't have to be unilaterally all the same to equal out positive for everybody. And I think this is where they get it wrong, because there's a lot more detail that went into this even before it was implemented. Obviously, you can't implement DEI in the government unless you follow the laws yourself. So Trump is challenging something that's not illegal, even though he calls it illegal. It's actually legal and it's actually law until it's changed. It hasn't been totally changed yet. All he's done is say, "Hey, y'all, you're on permanent leave, or you're on leave." A lot of those people, they're going to get their checks. Most of them, they will get, all of them, in fact, will get their checks. They will get some time free from work, right, to take care of some of the extra things if they needed it or not. But this could last for years. This could last for years, and it has to be fought on principle. Past cases. How did past cases dealing with federal employees get dealt with? How do punitive damages get dealt? How do rewards get dealt? How do a lot goes into it. So another executive order preceding one on Tuesday declared that all DEI offices, positions, and programs be terminated. You see this? There's another change in language. Order declares that all DEI offices, positions, and programs. What is a position? What is a program? They don't name the positions. They don't name the programs. They don't name the offices. Again, I don't know if this is just poor journalism at this point, but to me, it's not totally enough. That's 2 days ago. So maybe, all right, let's go to another one. Let's see here. Can y'all see this, by the way? Okay, let me go back. Let me check this one out. It says, anxious federal workers bids goodbye to job stability and remote work. Let's see what that one is like. It's the Wall Street Journal. Let me see here. An anxious federal workforce bids goodbye Goodbye, Charlie. No, goodbye to job stability and remote work. In early executive actions, Trump moved to order government workers back to the office full time and watered down. Look at, I mean, it's just so ironic. The people that are at remote work, they need to come back in the office, right? The people that are at work, they need to go on leave. It's like, it's just strange. It's very, very strange. President Trump pledges to unpin federal workforce began rippling through Washington after he moved forced government employees back to the office 5 days a week and weakened their job protections. Uh, yeah, inside and I don't even think what Trump is attempting to do here is possible. For him to be able to overturn this, look at this. President Trump's pledge to unpin federal workforce began rippling through Washington on Tuesday after he moved to force government employees back to the office 5 days a week and weaken their job. Yo, he doesn't even realize you can't just do that. You have to have a rollout for them to follow. They're employees. So, at the bare minimum, even if it's illegal, you have to show how it's going to be done so that it can be accomplished. So you don't just then say, "Oh, you didn't do this, you're fired now." You know. So 2 seconds. Just got 5 pills. Yeah, sorry about that. That was just my son. He's getting himself together. Let me see here. Right. So let me come out of this one now and then go over to this last one. Market watch. Will Trump will Trump's tough stance? I like how they wrote that. It's like, a tough stance. We got a tough guy here making a tough stance. He's going all or nothing, you know? Um, will Trump's tough stance on remote work drag everyone else back to the office? Don't bet on it. I do not think many other companies will follow, and I'm not sure if the federal policy itself will even be fully enforced, one expert said. Yeah, I don't think that's again enforcement. You got to understand there's so many issues here. What Trump presented was he presented so many problems. He doesn't realize it, and of course his cabinet and his staff are not pointing that out to his supporters, which are many, which are like half of the country. Um, but anybody that knows anything about government jobs, you would know that you have a union, and you would know that the union is all over this looking for every different angle to protect their workers. That's their job. Do you think police unions are a joke? Well, guess what? The unions for federal employees are not a joke either. They look into every detail of your employment rights. And when you sign a contract, you got to stand up for it. You got to follow through with it. Now, when you try to change the agreement, you can't just change it because you want it. You have to cover a long list of things to make sure that it's fair for the employee. After all, you're working for the government, and that's the exchange with every federal. That's the exchange with the military. You have a contract with the military when you sign up. They have rules and regulations they must follow, or they will be held liable, and you do too as a recruit. That's the deal. You both have rights. Now, in an authoritarian system and in a non-democratic system, you don't have rights. You just have to do what the employer says, in this case, the federal government, and similar to what Trump seems to want businesses to be able to do too to employees. You just do what we say. You just take the pay we say. You just take the treatment we say. And if you don't like it, leave. But you see, that doesn't turn out so well in a country, in the wealthiest country on earth, where workers have rights or should have rights. Um, it seems like a lot of American people are a little confused about, should they have rights protections for workers or should they not? Um, who should benefit? Should CEOs get a raise every year? Should CEOs get paid, 3,000 times what their expenses are a week? Or, should they get a similar payout as employees? How many hours do CEOs work a week? How much should they be paid for those hours versus their employees? I mean, I think a lot of people that support Trump don't look into that. They don't really look into cost of living, salaries, um, paid vacation, things that support your staff and support your work ethic. Um, you can't just work for a company that's doing well, and but that same company that's doing well treats its employees, excuse me, treats its employees bad. I mean, in any case, let's see here. Federal workers are being forced back to the office, but I do not think many other companies will follow. I'm not sure if the federal policy itself will even be fully enforced or persist. Nick Bloom, a Stanford University professor and an expert on remote and hybrid work, said in a LinkedIn post after Trump's order sending federal workers back to the office full time. Right, it's easy to make an order, but you also have to roll out how they're going to do it so they can do it. Otherwise, you could be violating other parts of your contract as an employee, as an employer. I mean, the COVID-19 pandemic made remote and hybrid jobs available to white collar workers on a large scale than ever before. Years later, eliminating remote work altogether would create such steep costs in recruiting, retention, morale. I mean, I don't think he understands this. He doesn't understand getting people um, to have a job, training people to have a job, educating people to fill a job. He doesn't understand it on the federal government level, training, access to to education, higher education. He doesn't understand it when it comes to new energy, solar industry. You got to have a rollout for education. You got to have techs able to do that rollout. They have to go to a technical school in the country and be certified by the state they operate in. These kind of things. He doesn't understand funding tech training, tech institutions. He doesn't understand how these things connect. Uh, Business, government, employees, and product. He doesn't seem to understand it, so he just kind of flip flops through it on the surface. Years later, eliminating remote work altogether would create such steep cost in recruiting. Right. Because people just aren't going to automatically go back to slavery. It's going to take them some time to adjust to slavery. And let me tell you, these cases on the federal government level, on the Supreme Court level, they could take 5 years easily or more. So these people ain't going to be forced to do too much too fast. I doubt that very seriously. Um, they will probably find something else, in that 4 or 5 year period of time. And they will also be compensated if you dare want to fire them. You will be compensating them at least part of their pension. You will be compensating them at least some years' pay, not just 6 months' pay, unemployment pay, because you're firing them with no good cause. So you're going to and announcing that you're firing them for something outside of their job description, even. That's the thing about it. So how much you're going to have to compensate them for? They were hired for this particular job with this particular job description. How are you going to punish them for doing their job? Yet the tide has appeared to be turning back towards the office lately. Trump's return to office order adds his administration to list of bold-faced names, including Amazon. Damn, Amazon is down today. Okay, okay, so it's still kind of just stable, I guess. Um, Yeah, this is close to stable too. It's down 1 point. That's not bad, but 0.57. That's nothing. Okay, AT&T is up, but I wouldn't be looking for AT&T to be, they must own the lines or something, because that must be how they stay afloat. But in any case, in terms of stocks, I want to talk about stocks another day, because I'm into stocks, but I don't usually tell people openly what I'm doing online with the stocks. But for those of y'all that want to hear more about that, just let me know, and we could do something privately. Let me see here, because money is money. So when it comes to straight up business, I like to do my business private. And people that are serious, they can, inquire. That's my feature. There are a lot of leaders that are doing remote hybrid work reluctantly, despite benefits. But that's my fear. There are a lot of leaders that are doing remote hybrid work reluctantly, despite benefits to both the company and staff, said Kate Lister, president of Global Workspace Analytics consulting firm. It's been because they have to, because they want to remain competitive. All they need is an excuse to pull the plug. You see? Yo, but experts say it's too early to call it quits on remote work. It is too early because you have to do a comprehensive look at all of it. And if the media, if the politicians want people to understand what's going on, they have to explain the details so people have the details. So far, it's not enough, if you ask me, from these articles. I'm not hearing the real problems. I'm hearing the surface level statements. You know, um, let me see. The share of job postings on Indeed mentioning remote and hybrid work climbed from less than 3% before the pandemic to roughly 10% in early 22. It was down to 8%. I think it's not so smart to pull back hybrid work so fast. Like, and also hybrid, just because COVID is the reason why a lot of companies started getting into hybrid work. It doesn't mean because COVID is over that you should discontinue it unilaterally, because COVID has given people a lens into the future also. So, it seems like right off the bat, a lot of people are being moved around, using a lot of fuel, using a lot of time, going back and forth to places where all they do is sit on a computer and not really have conversations with other people in the office anyway. Um, in my view, if that's the kind of job that you have, then hybrid work should be a stable feature in it, at least a few, days a month. You should be easily be allowed to just stay at home and do your work from home. If again, you're just traveling for an hour, wasting fuel, going to an office where you just sit on a computer and don't really communicate with anyone else anyway, in your office. You see, if it's disjointed like that, then I would say, what's the issue with some hybrid work? I don't see why it's got to be unilaterally bad. I think hybrid work is good because it keeps people at work. Think about that. Um, and then also, you need to look at the numbers. Even though you're hybrid working, how many people are, let's say you have a cold, how many people would call in because they have a cold or because they're a little sick? How many people would call in the office and call in sick if they actually were just at home too? Would they feel the same? Would they be like, oh, wow, well, all I got to do is open up my computer. I can still do this. Or would they say, nah, I got to get myself together, take that, hour trip, transport or wherever to work. Then I got to get in the office. Then I got, today I'm not feeling that well. It's a bit too much for me. Where is the line? And yeah, again, the devil is in the detail. Trillions of dollars are made by detail. Trillions of dollars are lost by the lack of detail. Detail and practical application. Detail in what is really actually factually going on day to day. Okay. In fact, the share of employees who engaged in telework, meaning working from home, nudged slightly higher from 2023 to 2024, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics. This December, 23% of the people reported teleworking for some or all hours in their job. 1 year earlier, almost 22% said the same thing. The amount of at least some telework in those labor department statistics trend higher barely throughout 2023. Okay. I gotta comprehend what that means. December 23, this December 23%. Okay, that was December 2024. 23% of the people reported teleworking for some or all hours in their job. 1 year earlier, almost 22% said the same thing. The amount of at least some telework in those labor department statistics. Okay, trend high. Yeah, so it doesn't seem like Trump communicated with employees at all before they came to this conclusion. It seems like it's people that are out to penalize but don't understand enough about the government to even know how to penalize somebody. So therefore, let's just DEI sounds like a good way. Let's remove that because it sounds like it will penalize some brown people. Wrong. It doesn't. It penalizes, first of all, largely it would penalize, in my view, in the United States, white women, you know, because they are the top DEI, you know. But then there's a whole other, there's handicapped people, people that have wheelchairs for some reason and need a special kind of desk maybe to be at work, or wheelchair access into their government facility. There's a lot of different things going on here. So it's not just brown people, as simple as that. Um, 3/4 of people with a job allowing for remote work say they have done so at least some of the time, according to Pew Research Center survey. Let me drop this one in the link, actually, in the chat, because this one seems to be pretty good. Pretty good article. Let me see. Oh, am I not? Y'all can't see this one. Sorry about that. Let me go over to the Pew Research article. Okay, here we go. Sorry about that. Here it is. 3/4 of people with a job allowing for remote work um, say they've done so at least some of the time. Okay. Almost half of the people in this group, 46%, said it would be unlikely they would stay at their job if their employer barred working from home. Okay. Um, According to this one Pew Research survey, there appears to be a disconnect between announcements that companies are making declaring an end to remote work and what actually happened on the ground. Bloom said, despite high profile company announcements, work from home levels have been flat since early 2023. Okay, that's another poll. Um, we see in the news some firms calling for RTOs, remote workers, right? Isn't that the term they use here? Um, yeah, remote tele officers or teleworkers, something like that. So there's much to be so there must be other firms increasing WFH. He said, I don't know any personally. So either it's all new entrants or enforcement is not matching the blizzard of announcements, right? Yeah, exactly. At this point, Bloom said he's becoming more puzzled on the question of which employers are making up with the WFH dark matter. Um, it's also unclear. White House. Wow. It's also unclear if the White House order will actually be enforced. There you have it. Bloom added. The order gives managers leeway to make exceptions for some federal employees to continue working remotely. You see? And that is why it has to be litigated, because it is not clear even, and this is also why it's going to fail on its face pretty much, because if you want if you want an order like that to pass through the Supreme Court, pass the legal requirements, you know, you have to make a at least a good argument from the beginning, and your argument can't just change in the middle of the case because you realize that you're not going to win. See, so to me, it already seems like this is not really going to be happening. But, again, you're dealing with Trump, who's a president that needs to have some wins somehow. Like the thing about DEI, the thing about minorities at the border, um, not non-Anglo minorities. We're not talking about other ones. Trump doesn't get that detailed into all the other immigration that's going on, like people like his wife, for example, in his family. He doesn't go into detail how his family is also the spitting image of, you know, why he's a little racist regarding his policy. If you're white and you come from a European country, he doesn't seem to have a problem with that. You know, if you're rich, he doesn't seem to have a problem with it. The problem is when you're not rich. When you're not rich, you should be penalized harsher. It seems to be backwards. Like the rich people should be expected to deliver more. And I'm curious about seeing what that looks like. Like if you migrate to the US, what are your obligations to benefit the society? How are you useful to the society? What is the purpose? And yeah, obviously you see that's not that a lot of people are coming to figure out that damn, people like Elon Musk just became American just because they had money. There was nothing else to it, pretty much. When I hear these big companies say come back to work, it just makes me more excited because I'm going to be more competitive in the job market. Exactly, said Bernard Green, founder and chief executive of EJ Consortium. Okay. Any case, this dude went on. So he's about that, and he's already made these public announcements. So let's see here who else says Trump layoffs. Let's see here. Yeah, this is all you see this? I don't like how it's all like 2 days ago because there was stuff happening yesterday. But this is the algorithm. This has got something to do with what's going on in YouTube, y'all. Um, Look at this. This comes up to ABC 30. You notice that? You notice that? Now, why would I have to type CNN when they should be at the top? CNN and a few others, Hill, right? But that's not the case. For some reason, they're not at the top. 72K views. Now, let me go back to this one. 56K views. But why did this come up first? You see? In any case, let me, can y'all see this? Right, here we go. Nah, y'all couldn't see it. My fault. Look at this. 98,000 views, 27 views, 27,000, 12,000. This came up first when I punched in Trump layoffs. But this has 72,000 views. Why didn't this one come up first? You know? Trump says he might get rid of FEMA again. Another fishing expedition. Like I think this is done to explain to his supporters. I think Trump is scared that he hasn't delivered, that he's not going to deliver to his supporters, and his supporters have been outraged. And I think this is how he's responding, like through making announcements that can't really be resolved until after he's president. You know, he's announcing these huge things that you don't see the effects of it. You know, you can't litigate it until after he's president. Pretty much, it will be the last year at best of Trump being president that these results will come out of a court. Jim Acosta, the late night CEO Thompson, warns reporters. Oh my God, I don't even want to hear this. All right, let's go. He's talking about getting rid of FEMA. This is ridiculous, but let me hear what this one says first. It was one with day one. Right here. Let's see here.
Millions of federal workers are now on paid leave after President Trump directed all federal agencies to end their diversity, equity, and inclusion staff.
Action News reporter Christina Lopez joins us now to explain how this executive order will directly impact Valley workers. Christina.
Graciela and Warren, during the early days of the Biden administration, a mandate was issued across all agencies to develop and bolster diversity, equity, and inclusion. Now, one of President Trump's first executive orders was to dismantle those programs, and now everyone working on them is being placed on leave. One of President Trump's first executive orders targets millions of federal employees working on diversity, equity, and inclusion programs and initiatives.
Our country is going to be based on merit again.
A memo from the U.S. Office of Personnel Management ordered.
When has the country ever been based purely on merit? It wasn't based on merit during slavery. It wasn't based on merit during Jim Crow. Jim Crow ended what, in the 60s? You know, I'm born, I'm a first generation Washingtonian born out of segregation myself, meaning I am one of the first groupings of Washingtonians, people from Washington, D.C., that were born and raised in a society that was not segregated. If you ask my parents, they couldn't tell you what that was like because they grew up in a city that was segregated. You see? So what is Trump talking about is going to be based on merit. People should, all people of any good conscience whatsoever, should firmly understand that this comment that he's making is completely, utterly ridiculous. He wants it to go back to being merit based when it wasn't merit based for 95% of its history. What is he talking about? It just started becoming merit based. He's acting like discrimination never existed before 2021. You see? It's ridiculous with his statement.
City equity
Working on them is being placed on leave.
One of President Trump's first executive orders targets millions of federal employees working on diversity, equity, and inclusion programs and initiatives.
Our country is going to be based on merit again.
A memo from the U.S. Office of Personnel Management ordered leaders to place all.
Okay. The emails provide important information regarding your employment status. Effectively January 2nd, 2025, employees within. Oh, this must be a typo. That's 20. That's the 20th. Okay. Yeah, they removed that. I don't know why they removed that for this, but that's 20 instead of 2. January 20th, 2025 at whatever time, blah, 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 EST, all employees within the ODEIA will be placed on administrative leave. Now, let me see something here. ODEIA. Is that what it's called? ODEIA. Right. ODEIA. Okay, ODEIA, Office of Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and Accessibility. So, a government department or initiative in the United States. So, it's a department and an initiative. The office is typically responsible for ensuring that federal policies. All right, so let's go back to this. All employees within ODEIA will be placed on administrative leave with full pay and benefits. You see, with full pay and benefits. This means the reason why they're doing this is an indication that they may lose this in courts. So, in order to avoid pain and suffering, which would likely come from an order like this, they want to make sure that they're full pay and full benefits, so there won't be a contestation, or to limit the adverse effects later, the harm done to these people that are being unjustly removed from their jobs. Because whether you know it or not, the United States of America's federal government has a responsibility to do what? Combat discrimination of minorities, combat anti all these things that the ODEIA is there to do. The federal government has a responsibility to do that. To protect women from gender discrimination, protect employees for any form of discrimination, any form. That means protect white people too from discrimination. But I think people like Trump are having a hard time understanding the difference between hard work and discrimination themselves, because they seem to think that because they can't discriminate so easily, that makes their job harder. And it just doesn't work that way. Yeah, or they seem to think they're above the law, like the law doesn't apply to them, so they want to remove this. I mean, please, this is not going anywhere, folks. I mean, and again, I could be wrong. I'm okay with being wrong. Sometimes I am wrong. I'm not often wrong, however, and because I don't usually take harsh positions so quickly without doing a little bit of research. I like to know what I'm talking about when I do it. For example, right now, I'm just looking at, I could tell you what I suspect based on my own knowledge, but what I'm reading here, it backs up, it qualifies my suspicions. Please note the following: pay and benefits. You will continue, MAGA folks, hear us out and hear us well. Hear your master well. DEI, ODEI employees will continue to receive your full salary and benefits during the entirety of this administration leave period. Okay? Work responsibilities. You are not required or expected to perform any work related tasks during this period of administration leave. You see, this is stuff that this is legal stuff, because they already expect they will be losing this, so they're not setting themselves up for a double loss. That's why they're using this clear language. Office attendance, you are not, see this, how you see how clear this language is. You are not required or expected to come to the office during this time. See, all three of these things have now been excluded as a problem for you. So these people are not to be experiencing any problem whatsoever because of this executive action. Because just because it's an executive action does not mean that it's lawful. It doesn't. Trump is protected from this act, even if it is unlawful. But for it to be lawful, it must be won through the Supreme Court. And that's not happening yet. So until that happens, and that likely won't end until the next administration comes in, probably after, just like what happened with the 2021 American Act plan, rescue plan. That took years. Republicans fought it, still trying to fight it, even though Biden's not even the president anymore. Okay. Now, email access. Your email access will be suspended. Make sure that your address of record and contact information with their agency. Yeah, I mean, you have to, they basically have to do this, because if you're not to do any work at all, then you don't need email access. Right. So we will provide you with updates as soon as they are available. We appreciate your patience and cooperation. There you have it. So
all staff working in DEI roles on paid leave by 5 p.m. on Wednesday. In President Trump's order, he says that DEI policies violate federal civil rights laws and, quote, undermine the traditional American values of hard work, excellence, and independence.
I mean, they're going to lose this, because it's very clear. I mean, I don't know how many people understand this, but the federal government has an obligation to defend people from racial discrimination, from discrimination, period. All types. So I don't know what Donald Trump thinks he's doing. To me, it sounds like just something to have people talking about, to distract people's time with. Because given the fact that the federal government has an obligation in its own constitution to defend people from discriminatory practices, at work, whether in the federal government, private corporations, whatever, that means whatever it is he's doing here, he has to show how that's not part of the government's responsibility. It already has pledged to do. It does. He's making it sound like this is going against the federal government fighting discrimination. It's like a backwards argument. It's totally backwards. I really don't get it, but to me, this is not. This might even get shot down even faster than 4 years. This might get shot down, in a year, to be honest with you, because the Supreme Court is not looking too good. They have been accused with siding with Trump, not over law, but just because of the billionaire status and handouts, under the table right-wing handouts, which the Supreme Court is under extreme scrutiny for taking, essentially. Now, at this point, there hasn't been any change, really any significant change in the Supreme Court's ability to have punitive damages when one of their judges violates the ethic laws, like takes $1 million for leaning one way or another during a court case. This is what they've been accused of doing, cases that affect millions of people. And, to me, it seems like the Supreme Court doesn't want any more attention. So this is a flimsy case. So my guess is they want to stay far away from it as possible.
Individual achievement in favor of an unlawful, corrosive, and pernicious identity-based spoils system, end quote.
And I think this DEI leave is just another example of kind of cruelty and petty.
The best way to stop discriminating against people on the basis of race or gender
is to keep the federal government out of it. Don't penalize people for discriminating. Don't make any measures towards inclusion. Don't do any of that. Just back up and close your eyes and be blind.
To stop discriminating against people on the basis of race and gender.
In 2022, the government released its first DEI.
So discrimination in his example would be like, hey, don't call Jim Crow Jim Crow. There was nothing illegal about Jim Crow. Jim Crow was legal. Slavery was legal. Jim Crow ended in 1960s, right? But it was still legal. It was the law. And the other people had other hardships. So, it's not fair to call it that. It's just life. We all have a hard time. No, that's not what it is. White men were by law not made to work for no money. Their skin color was not made to be a problem. Walking down the street, drinking a glass of water, shopping in a store, doing anything, so they are the last ones to even speak on this, to be honest. And it should be insulting for a thinking person, because this comment should be insulting to women, white women, first and foremost, because this is an attack on their history. Now, we could go back to the days where we start saying, hey, it doesn't mean anything that white women couldn't vote. It doesn't mean anything that white women couldn't own property. That doesn't mean anything. Hey, stop being discriminatory by talking about that stuff. To me, it seems like this is where they're going with this argument. It doesn't make sense. The federal government has an obligation to protect people. They need to have a plan and prove and show how they're doing it, and how they're also having results. Where are the results in the lack of discrimination? Where are the results in your hiring practice that show you don't discriminate? That's what the DEI stuff is about. Show some damn results and operate based on your results. Don't just operate in the blind, And when he says colorblind, you better understand, when Trump says colorblind, he literally means don't look at any data.
Progress report. It found that the federal workforce reflects the broader U.S. population overall.
Is to stop discriminating against people on the basis of race and gender.
In 2022, the government released its first DEI progress report. It found,
by the way, it's not race and gender. It's disabilities, it's sexual orientation. It's so many other things besides race and gender. just for people to pay attention to, because a lot of you all, that's millions and millions of people just being swept under the rug with just that erroneous statement.
Found that the federal workforce reflects the broader U.S. population overall, with 60% of workers being white and 55% being male. However, it found
50% being white and 55% being male. But the women ain't upset about it. It look, women, I've given up on you. I don't think you're going to vote in your best interest anymore. You know, I thought that that would be a clear case of American women moving forward in truth and honesty for their actual history in the country. I see that no, that doesn't take precedent to being second to white men largely, and not white men, but excuse me, I mean ideologues, white men with real harsh views of other people, um, harsh views of the world, harsh views of their own family, views of their own communities, harsh views, only harsh views, never celebratory, never equitable either when it comes to celebratory. I mean, being able to see the effects of good policy. They don't seem to stand behind it when it comes to education, when it comes to healthcare, when it comes to these things that affect women most. White men are not for that. I mean, in America, white men are not for white women's health. They're just not. And again, it's illegal to discriminate. So what goes for white women, if it's bad, it has to go for everybody else too, just to make it fair, right? Even though it's not fair because the underlying premise is foul, and the underlying premise is to be blind, to not acknowledge any of the historic wrongs or current wrongs, daily wrongs, issues that people live with when it comes to discrimination. I mean,
found less diversity at the senior executive level and being male overall, with 60% of workers being white and 55% being male. However, it found less diversity at the senior executive level, with more than 75% white and more than 60% male.
So when you challenge them,
so this is the problem. These guys are having an issue being focused on, while they have no problem identifying who are their targets to commit harm and violence against. I mean, these same people have no problem saying we'd rather have you die with a because you couldn't have an abortion than you live. They don't have any problem with that, with women having lack of access to health care. They would rather deny a woman the very same right that they have towards their own body. You see, there's no one going out there telling men that they should stop getting vasectomies. No one's telling men don't get a vasectomy. No one's instead you hear men crying about, child support, even though they have the lion's share of the jobs. Historically, even though they got a head start over every woman, these men are still complaining about something that doesn't exist. The fact that things should be equal. That's literally what they're complaining about. And they're being very dubious by trying to suggest that, no, you're the ones being unequal because you're trying to acknowledge discrimination. That's not fair.
Notion that doors should be open. You're challenging the progress that women have made, that people of color have made, that people of gender identity have made over the years to create a stronger and a better America. That's what this is about.
Some policies and programs this order will impact will include training, accountability, and federal grant and benefits programs. But one group who will not be impacted are those working for the federal judiciary. According to the Eastern District of California, which oversees the U.S. courthouse in downtown Fresno, quote, President Trump's executive order pertaining to DEI employees in Fresno, as far as we are aware, this executive order only pertains to employees of the executive branch of the government. The judiciary is not run by the executive branch, end quote.
You hear that? Do you hear that? And I'm guessing that this is the legal stance that is basically every state is going to stand up to Trump on regarding this. It's going to be challenged on the state, federal, and in federal courts, right? I mean, I'm sorry, in federal courts by states. So in California, for example, what did they just say?
We are aware this executive order only pertains to employees of the executive branch of the government.
Employees of the executive branch of the government. You see, so basically, there's a language problem. Trump has to explain the language that he's been using. And to be honest, even though it's an executive order, doesn't mean it passed the legal smell test. And most people are beginning to notice, if you just pay attention to the wordings that Trump uses, you will notice they're not amounting to a lot. Even the arguments that you heard a few of those senators make about the removal of DEI, the ones that are for it. But listen to their arguments. The arguments don't make any sense when you know the law. So what is it about ultimately? So if I was a person that didn't want you to look at my faults, I would talk about some of the easy victories I had, even if they weren't even really victories. Or I would point to something I want to do that sounds good, but even if I didn't believe I would be able to achieve it, I would point to it because, hey, if that's what the voters want to hear, if that's what the people want to hear that support me, I will say it, even though I know I can't do it. And I think a lot of people, Republicans, Democrats, even if you're independent, you're all going to walk through this door with Trump together on this. You didn't elect Kamala Harris. You elected Trump. Even the people that didn't vote elected Trump. Even the people that were independents and said they were voting for somebody who won't have any possibility of winning this election, they voted for Trump too. So it's not just Democrats that voted against Trump or voted for, will have to live with Trump. Independents will have to live with Trump, but his own constituents will have to live with him too. You will have to live with his failed policies and his successful policies. You will have to, because you don't have a choice as a taxpayer. You will be forced to go along with every single thing that any other American has to walk through. And you got to ask yourself, has that made life easier for you?
The judiciary is not run by the executive branch, end quote.
Now, as for next steps, by tomorrow, federal agency leaders must compile a list of DEI offices created and workers hired since 2020.
You see this? You see this? This is what I was talking about. Where's the list? Look, he didn't have the list himself. Yeah, what is this? He's the one giving the executive order without even having a list. That doesn't make sense, y'all.
Employees of the executive branch of the government. The judiciary is not run by the executive branch, end quote.
Now, as for next steps, by tomorrow, federal agency leaders must compile a list of DEI offices created and workers hired since 2020. And in 10 days, they must create a plan to carry out what's being called a reduction in force action against those workers. Morning, Graciela.
Facts, Murdoch. Exactly. The world would have to. If no matter, doesn't matter. And I think the world has been very interested in this election to some degree, more so than I've seen before. I don't know if that's an advent of social media. Maybe social media makes it seem like, there's more or less of focus on a particular topic. But to me, it seems like there's been a lot of some things that have gone on. For example, there's a lot of independents that say themselves, I'm not saying this is real because I don't buy it myself, but there's a lot of independents that say that because of Biden and Kamala Harris's position on Palestine, that this is why they lost the election. And therefore, that's why Trump is the president, because Kamala Harris did not do unilaterally what some Palestinian voters in America, in the United States, were wanting or demanding. But I don't buy that, because this is reality. Independents don't have a chance at doing a goddamn thing in the United States of America, because the United States of America must, as a nation, work on that for long periods of time before an independent party could even be substantial enough to govern. You see what I mean? To win an election. So right now you have two parties. You really need to first focus on the things that you think are most sound, and then go from that to create more parties, not just a third party, but five parties, six parties. I agree with that notion, but I don't think you can operate within two, because I think the differences are so staggering. It's like, you voted for AFK. Well, hey, you about to get him, bro. And listen, keep this in mind. Different people are affected in different ways. Like, I'm an American citizen, but I didn't vote for I think you're talking about this guy. This independent. Yeah. Maybe you joking, Murdoch, okay? Because I didn't vote for his ass. That's for damn sure. And I didn't vote for Trump. But I did take the COVID vaccine. I've been an advocate of it. I understand herding, what herding is, and no matter what, this COVID thing is going to be solved through herding. That's how it was solved. Whether you took the vaccine or not, you're part of it, because the whole theory was based on herding, right? That enough people take the vaccine, that will affect the people that didn't in a positive way. Also, that's what they say. Or if you don't take the vaccine and you just happen by the chance of luck, roll the dice and you live, bingo, we got a new herder on our hands. Thank you. If you want to take that route, in most cases, like where I'm living in Denmark, as an American citizen, you have both possibilities. Even though it depends on your profession, most people lean towards the COVID vaccination. More people took the COVID vaccination here than in a lot of places. However, they had the right not to at the same time. So it was a little different how they handled it here, but people voted for RFK, bro. And now they're going to listen. Now they're going to find out if polio vaccines are good or not. Do you want a polio vaccine or not? You be the judge. I mean, you weren't here in the 50s and in the 40s. So, hey, you want to try that experiment over? Why knock yourself out? But other people ain't going along with that outside of the U.S. People generally elect governments that are willing to work on accumulating information, data storage, and interpreting the data to the public, presenting the data to the public through more than one source, and then going with the overline, what the overline data says, overall data says, excuse me. That's how most countries do it. It's not necessarily party driven. But in the US, you can see, because there's only two parties, everything seems to be party driven. Like, I'm not going to vote for 2 more cents in my pocket because a Democrat wants me to have 2 more cents. Hell, I would like 2 more cents, but because a Democrat is saying he wants 2 more cents, I'm against it. That's how it's become with everything. So now we can't even talk about vaccines. We can't talk about vaccines in a normal way. We can't talk about economics in a normal way. We can't talk about nothing in it anymore. Andrea, hey sister. We got Murdoch here. I think that was a joke though. Murdoch said I voted for it. But even if it wasn't, hey, it's just a realization. No matter who we are, no matter who we voted for, we are all going to walk through this Trump lens together. And we are going to find out the truth together. And we are going to document the effects together. I will be doing that. I will be online. And if somebody gets crushed by a Trump policy and they're a Republican or a MAGA person, I'm going to run right up to them and say, oh, what happened here? I want to hear. I want to hear how it hurt. I want to hear, was it worth the vote? Or if he does something positive, I want to hear it too. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't really give a damn ultimately, because although I'm an American, I don't live in the US. So I'm also frustrated with Americans not understanding universal health care is simple and factual and actual in most Western nations, and excellent. I'm a little confused how Americans haven't figured that out yet. I'm a little confused how in most Western nations you get paid to go to technical school and higher learning, but in the US, the richest one, you don't. I'm a little confused how all Americans haven't figured that out. So instead of waiting for Americans to figure that out, I just live my life. it just happens to be somewhere where people have figured out those things, that universal health care is the best route, that paid education is the best route to getting people educated, to keeping people out of crime, to keep away from crime, to this kind of stuff. You know what I mean? But I made the choice myself by moving. I didn't just stay in a battle over things that to me already seem simple to understand. I actually moved my ass. Yeah, red, blue, we all need to get to the white of our flag, a truce. Yeah, that's what I think, man. I think, when I see these MAGA people, excuse me if it offends some people, but I am not from MAGA country. I'm from the East Coast. I'm from the capital of the United States of America, and we think we have our faults and we have our good things, but we are the way we are. And we take offense to somebody thinking they can come to our part of the country and tell us what to do with a gun in their hand. I mean, and for me, that's what I take most offense to. Like when you raise a gun, you claim to want to force another American citizen, yo, you really need your ass whooped, because that's not a conversation anymore. You see what I mean? We can disagree and have conversation and still have respect. That's how it has to be. Because the moment you start threatening people's lives with your gun, you have to understand when the gun is pointed at you, what you're going to do at it. So I'm like, and I don't think MAGA people know what it's like to have a gun pointed at them yet. They don't know what it's like to have Americans angry at them, like deathly angry at them. I don't think they know what it's like when they haven't seen it before, when liberals start picking up these guns. They haven't seen that before, but this is where these MAGA people are pushing liberals. But me myself, I know that there's a fine line. Operating a gun to defend your home, that's one thing. Whether you need it or not, that's another thing. But we know that a whole lot of people with guns tend to be shooting themselves too. And so just, it's not just about having the right to have a gun. It's about using it responsibly and being a responsible citizen. And a gun is not the only way you can be a responsible citizen. What about clean water? What about clean water pipes? What about, access to education? That's stronger than the right to have a gun. Because, after all, if you don't know how to make a gun, you're just a slave pulling the trigger at the end of the day, too. You're a slave to another dynamic, So I just think people need to keep it real and be real about this. America was colonized in the late 1400s, 1500s. All of America, North, South, Central. You have natives, you have people that were brought from Africa to do labor, right? Against their will. And then you have Europeans who migrated there as immigrants, as colonists, and some were servants of the colonists. Some Europeans were also servants, right? So so we just got to keep those facts in mind and recognize who we have most in common with, and work on commonality, strengthening our common, the common things that we have that make us who we are. But right now we seem to be against Mexicans, against South Americans, against North Americans. That kind of policy doesn't work. It's useless. It's not factual. It's not based on it's not based on core elements that create societies, that make societies function. I mean, so I don't see any other American as being different from U.S. Americans. We might have different politics, but we all share the same food. We all share the same music. We all share the same cultural things, to one degree or another. People in Cuba may be against, the government may not be for the U.S. right now, but hey, they're Christians. How'd that happen? Why are they Catholics? How did that happen? You see what I mean? So there's a whole lot we have in common that we don't seem to utilize. And this right-wing politic is what I don't like about it. It's just ridiculous. But anyway, Welcome to have you, brother. Murdoch. Good to have you. Let me keep it going. Oh, and let me see here. Oh, you're from Texas too. Yeah, it's snow country. A lot of snow down there in Texas, I hear.
Hey, Central California, stay up to date with all the
Let me see. Now let me come back out of this one second here. I'm just having an early weekend morning. Um, Let me see. Trump orders federal DI workers to be, yeah, he orders them to be on paid leave. Um, oh, wait a second. There's a couple of other, well, right, check this out. Here's something specific.
President Donald Trump is ordering millions of federal employees eligible to work remotely to go back to the office. An executive order signed right after his inauguration.
So the president's executive order is really broad, and it covers all federal employees seemingly.
The White House published more details, urging heads of departments and agencies to terminate remote work and require employees to return to work in person on a full-time basis. Natalia Ramirez-Lee, assistant professor of law at UC Law San Francisco, says this won't be easy depending on circumstances.
When it comes to non-unionized employees, the president has really broad authority to regulate their work conditions and their arrangements. But when it comes to unionized employees, a lot of those unionized employees have remote work provisions within their collective bargaining agreements.
Collective bargaining agreements. And I think these were legal and they were obtained legally through the state, through the federal government. So it, to me, seems like Trump is really desperate and is really looking to show his base that he's doing something for them. But to be honest, y'all, this is not even a scratch on liberals' shoulders. To be honest, I mean, it's not. And I'm not saying I because I'm a liberal myself. I'm conservative, really. I'm not that liberal. But when it comes to minding my own damn business, I'm liberal with that. I'm like, you do you over there. I'm doing me. We say hello. We can work together on the things we have in common, and the things we don't have in common, we don't have to sit down together and deal with them together. You know, we can be separate on those things. But I'm conservative with my own life, though, and my own values, my personal practices, myself. But I don't dictate to others what their practices should be. I'm not even concerned with that. You know, I think there's so many other problems that we all share to where a lot of this other stuff would disappear if we just focus on the main things. But here you hear it. They're explaining it. It's not going to be as easy as Trump says.
And so it's going to be a much longer and
this ain't even DEI. This is just the order. The DEI order is the same. You got to understand, DEI, federal employees. Anytime you're talking about the federal government, they all have similar provisions as union employees. So there's going to be all kinds of challenges to their real actual rights as employees baked into the cake that Trump doesn't seem to have any knowledge of or respect for. And that just ain't going to work.
Difficult fight.
The American Federation of Government Employees, the union that represents over 750,000 employees of the federal government, is responding in part. Whether AFGE will file a lawsuit depends on how it's implemented. If they violate our contracts, we will take appropriate action to uphold our rights. In San Francisco in 2023, federal employees were told to work from home amid the crime and drug use outside of their building in the Soma neighborhood.
There's a multitude of things that Donald Trump is doing that I am in disagreement with, but one of the things that I agree with is let's get people back to the office.
According to a report by the U.S. Office of Personnel Management, the majority of federal employees, or 1.2 million, work fully on site. Yet there are still 1.1 million, or 46.4% of workers, who are eligible to work remotely. Supervisor Dorsey, who represents the district where the federal building is located, believes this executive action will help small businesses.
It's better for our economy, certainly for a city.
Professor Ramirez-Lee believes this is the beginning of a bigger strategy.
Administration has been very explicit in that they are doing this as a form of attrition.
In San Francisco, Luz
Exactly. That is also another legal hurdle they will have to overcome themselves when it comes to fighting back some of the pushback. Because once you go out there and you make enough comments about your reasoning behind it, those things are now on record.
Peña, ABC7 News.
To do big overhauls like this, um, they can't be they can't be divisive. They got to have support from Dems and Republicans, and it just seems like Trump is going about a lot of things thinking that he doesn't need any support from Democrats. And to make something law in the United States, you do. The Republicans don't have a mandate, they don't have a large majority. They actually need to do real congressional reform. They need Democrats. And otherwise, you're stuck with executive orders. And executive orders are not necessarily law in themselves. You know, if they're not deemed to follow the law according to the Constitution, um, then they're not legal. So, and a president could give an illegal order. It does not mean you have to follow it. And in fact, we're these people are even being more gracious to Trump because they're just saying, "Hey, man, show us how it can be done effectively while not trampling on their rights in their contract, and we can do it." But so now they put the earnest back on Trump. You see, and in fact, you can't even go into court and penalize anybody for something you haven't paved the way for them to achieve, to actually follow in the first place. So I don't see what's up. I don't see this going anywhere outside of just something big to do, something people got to sit around and talk about. But it's not something it doesn't seem like Trump's really concerned about it. Trump, my guess is that Trump is thinking about how he's going to line his pockets. These things about Dems, liberals, DEI, he's not really concerned with at all. I don't believe so. I think most of this is just a distraction for his base. And he's really looking at how he's going to get away with scratching, putting some scratch in his pocket, in his family pocket, and walk away from all of this without being penalized himself. I think everything else is pretty much a distraction. I mean, he's going to turn around. He turned around on Ukraine. So what he said when he was being elected, running for office, is not what he did when he became president. And, I think a lot of this stuff is the same for Trump. And you got to ask yourself, or I do at least, I ask myself, why? Why does it keep turning out this way for Trump? And the only thing I can think of is that it's not something he's really interested in the first place. It's just a distraction to keep people busy, to play the game, to make it seem like he's about his presidential politics. But I think people are slowly finding out that no, Trump is really about his own pockets. Right now, if you're going to put some money in his pocket today, he is with you today. Tomorrow is another day. And I think that played out for Vladimir Putin. Because if all you want is bribes, hell, we could bribe you more than anybody else. I mean, have you figured that part out? The U.S. government has $27 trillion a year GDP. Do you understand what that is? So when it comes to bribing somebody, you would think the country with the highest GDP would have more bribe money than someone with a low GDP, right? Yes, they would. So Trump's corruption doesn't necessarily make him uncontrollable. But what it means is that he can still be a nuisance to the average American's life and to other folks' life, Let's see here. Murdoch says, middle ground always has leftover land mines. Yeah, that's true. On Trump's Ukraine policy because Putin lied to him. I mean, man, I think when it comes to that Ukraine thing, there is no middle ground because do you want somebody invading your country? And not even about the country. Let's think about the province. Would you want someone invading the province that you live in, telling you that you brought this on yourself? You know, they're invading Ukraine, telling the Ukrainians that they're coming to get rid of Nazis, but the Ukrainians know and have already stated to the world they're coming to kill us, to commit genocide because of our ethnicity, which is unique, which is an issue in that part of the world. Just because people have one color doesn't mean they're the same ethnicity, doesn't mean they're all in the same social classes together, right? And I agree with this. For me, it would have been much easier. Well, I think NATO is doing an excellent job, and I think the EU is doing an excellent job at adjusting, and I think other countries are also. Um, there's things that are happening. I mean, look, Nigeria, when the Ukraine war kicked off, Nigeria started selling more oil to Western countries. Now that Trump's in office, a month before he came into office, they already announced they're going to be doing more too. They're going to be selling more oil to the. So a lot is going on that's not on TV, and I think it's hard with international politics because you hear one thing and then you find out they don't tell you everything, and you got to do your research and to really see what's going on. But I think if the people were just firm, the average person was just firm in the idea that invading Ukraine was bad for everyone, was bad for Russia, and that Russia lied about it. They lined up 150,000 troops. And while people pointed that out and said, "Hey man, you look like you're about to invade, are you?" And Putin said, "You crazy, y'all, we're not invading. What are you talking about? There's no invasion going on here." And then he invaded. So I agree. Like, the man lied. And why would you want to support a despot? I mean, he's not even liked in his own country. And I'm not talking about, as much as American people put up with Trump. Trump is disliked, but they put up with a lot of shit from Trump. But the Russians put up with way more shit from Putin. People have to be reasonable about that. Americans still so far seem to be in favor of democracy, in favor of dialogue. And I hope that the congressional members, particularly from the red bloc states, agree that there should be more congressional dialogue on record regarding these issues, and less executive order, particularly when it comes to these kind of things. Like, to me, it seemed like the right just kind of tried to play into Putin's arguments, which were unfounded, similar to how they played into January 6th. How can you pretend? How can you accept that the people that were there protecting your life are now going to be called traitors? I mean, how can you accept that the police protecting the representatives themselves are going to be called traitors by the very representatives they protected? I mean, and that's what you do when you pardon those people who committed that violent act. You're calling the police that tried to stop them traitors. They're rewarding the people that attack the police and attack the reps. And, so there's a lot of issues, but at least people are still communicating on the floor of the Congress. At least there's still a dialogue. Russia, sadly enough, there's even less dialogue with media, less free media, less democracy, yo. It's just a fact. So, but let me check something out. I'm gonna be back later on today. It's been some good convo. I got a few people coming on the panel later on this evening. So if you guys are off, anybody that's off, feel free to join in with that one. I know I keep saying I'm coming back at that time. That would be approximately like 9 p.m. something. Yeah, between 7 and 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, USA, and that would be like roughly 1 a.m. Central European Time. So so folks, I'm going to be out for the moment. It's so much news going on right now, though, and it's so hard to keep up with all of it. It's kind of mind-boggling, but it is what it is, and we got to do the best that we can. That's what I'm doing. But until then, I appreciate y'all, and I hope tonight is going to be even more interesting dialogue when we get some more heads up here on the panel. I'm sure it's going to be. I'm going to put out some. I don't usually invite people, and I'm not too good at presenting the lives before they happen. I usually just prepare the live and then go live. But look out this evening, and I hope everybody's doing well. If you're on the West Coast, I hope things are livable, and my thoughts go out to the people that are suffering there. Also, love my fro, or love me fro, or love me fro. Where you at? Let us know that you're doing good out there on the West Coast. Haven't heard from you in the last, since this fire. To be honest with you, sister, since the fire. So check in with us. Let us know how you're doing, and everybody else that's out there in Los Angeles or in California for that matter. And we're gonna stay up. I'll see y'all back later on this evening. Blessings to everybody. One.